Thank you for your time. This short presentation has been prepared by the group working on a new course for Methodists who are training as local preachers or worship leaders. For the last 25 years, trainee local preachers have used Faith and Worship. The Worship Leaders course is almost 20 years old. Both needed to be rethought for many reasons, but especially because in many circuits the roles of worship leaders and preachers have changed during that time. So Ministries Committee has commissioned a comprehensive redevelopment of local preacher and worship leader training. A group of experienced preachers and worship leaders has been working on this. They come from all over the country, from small congregations and larger ones, from villages, towns and cities, from different ethnic groups. We're also involving people who have creative skills, especially in electronic media. The result of this collaborative work is a new style of training, which we'll describe in this presentation. Take a moment to look at the adjectives on this page. These are words which we've had in mind as the work has progressed, and which, if we've got it right, will describe the attitudes and the commitment of students who spend time on this new course. Future local preachers and worship leaders are likely to be the main consumers, but we're hoping others will want to join them. The definition of worship leaders you can read on the screen. In many churches, worship leaders are now taking a major role. But we know that there are lots of other people taking part by reading lessons, leading prayers, and so on. They're not obliged to take the new course, but it will have plenty for them as well. As we'll see, the way the training will work offers different parts or modules suitable for the different roles. We've designed 8 modules, all of which will be taken by trainee local preachers. Worship leaders take the first 4, with an option to move on if they feel called to do so. Other students might share a single relevant module. The first 4 modules started being tried out last year, and numbers 5 to 8 should be ready for trial in the autumn of 2015. Here's a challenge for you. We've been using the title you see here, but someone somewhere may come up with something better. We're open to your ideas, so don't be afraid to offer your suggestion. On this and the next few slides, we'll now describe our vision for the new course. It's an exciting opportunity to take account of all sorts of changes in our culture, in new ways of being church, in new media technologies, and new educational developments. We've also paid attention to feedback from previous trainees. There'll be a stronger focus on the skills required for preaching and leading worship, but without any dumbing down of theological and biblical study. The course won't be accredited, but it will roughly equate to studying at A-level. The format will be refreshingly new, with a mixture of individual study and reflection, group discussion, and practical application in each of the modules. Students will be supported in their studies in a range of ways, including local peer or tutor-led small groups and regional study days. There may also be short intensive courses. We hope students will find the new course flexible and accessible for everyone, whatever their social, geographic, ethnic or educational backgrounds. The course is intended to look to the future as well as the present, and seeks to promote local learning and development in circuits and churches. The small study groups can include, for example, children's and youth workers, leaders of house groups, in fact anyone who wants an opportunity to deepen their Christian discipleship. We believe the course has the potential to encourage cooperation and to renew our confidence in God. For future local preachers and worship leaders in particular, it'll certainly be an exciting new way of training. Those who take part will be adults, and it's important that all students are honoured for what God has already done in their lives. They'll be stimulated and enabled in their learning, not just given instructions. The course will be delivered online with the addition of some printed material. It won't just be words, and it won't be like studying a textbook. There'll be recordings to listen to or to watch, and practical ideas to try out and then to reflect on. We want to encourage conversation so that students learn together. Here's an outline of how the modules work. There are 8 of them, as we've already seen. In each, there are 3 sections, and then in each section, there are 5 headings, which you can see on the screen. We'll go through these headings in order on the following slides. Each of the 3 sections in a module is expected to take about 20 hours, so a full module is 60 hours work. The first heading in each section is worship, which makes sense because worshipping God is the focus of the whole course. Under this heading, students will be offered lots of materials for worship related to the theme of the module being studied. They'll be suitable for use by a student on her or his own, or by a group. The second heading is prepare. Before an individual student meets with the study group, this is time spent working on all the kinds of material provided, which they'll be able to explore more fully with others when they meet. The Explore heading is intended mainly for the person who will facilitate the group when it meets. It suggests ways a conversation can be developed as the group explore further what students have prepared. There's also an outline which can be used for a group session lasting about an hour and a half. Then we come to a heading we've called Apply and Reflect. The learning group may have all sorts of people in it, with differing roles in worship. So under this heading we provide a variety of suggestions about putting the exploration into practice. This can happen either in a group or an individual can use the material on their own. This final heading takes things further. We know many participants won't necessarily have time to specialise or to extend their study immediately. But because we hope people will take seriously their continuing development beyond the course, we're providing suggestions which people can pick up and use at a later stage if they wish. Realistically, we know that for most people, life is pretty busy already, and we've carefully considered the time needed for each part of the process. We expect that most students will take between 2 and 4 complete modules per year. This slide shows how this works out to between 120 and 240 hours study time during a year, or between 2.5 and 5 hours a week. At its heart, the course is about making a strong link between what students are learning and the practical experience of their varied roles in preaching or worship leading. It's also about whetting the appetite for experimentation and development, and for further study. And it's all designed to build up and strengthen their confidence in the love of God. You'll remember that the first 4 modules, which we've given the working titles you can see, are for both local preachers and worship leaders. We think most students will work through these 4 modules in somewhere between a year and 2 years. In terms of the familiar pattern of local preacher training, this means they'll be on note when they begin, but will be on trial either during these modules at some stage or certainly by the end of Module 4. These are the working titles of Modules 5 to 8, which only local preachers will take. They'll start being tried out in autumn 2015. We're not spelling out here what these modules will contain, but they'll have the same structures we looked at earlier. In time, the group which is working on the course expect to add further modules which will help with continuing local preacher development. From September 2016, these modules will be the recognised training pathway for all local preachers and worship leaders. Learning will be supported in various ways, but the same course will be followed by all. It's important to repeat that the material of the new course will mainly be offered online, which will ensure that the modules are up to date and interactive. Each student will need to have internet access. We're keen, though, to assist those who are less technologically literate and those whose online access is less adequate. Student portfolios will be assessed in terms of knowledge and understanding, in terms of their practical use of the material in leading worship, and in terms of their own ability to reflect on their experience. That's important in preparing students to continue their own process of evaluating what they're doing. Depending on their intended outcome, students will submit either 1 or 2 portfolios for assessment. The portfolio of those training as worship leaders will be from the first 4 modules. The additional submission for local preachers covers modules 5 to 8. Assessing a portfolio will start locally, where it'll be the responsibility of a local person, usually the student's tutor. These assessments will then be checked by a regional moderator. And finally, to ensure consistent standards are being achieved, a few randomly selected portfolios will be checked at connectional level. The portfolio splits into 2 parts. The first includes evidence of how the student has prepared and led worship, including for local preachers the sermon, as well as evidence of how the service was received. It also includes 2 reflections on worship that the student has attended. One of these reflections will come from a style of worship deliberately chosen to be unfamiliar to the student. This might be from a different denomination. Then the second part of the portfolio shows how the student has learned to apply what they've learnt in each module. The evidence for this will be in the form chosen by the student from a number of media options. He or she will choose a different option for each of the 4 modules. The choices will include a wide variety of traditional and less familiar methods, ranging from a short essay to a poem or a video, from a blog to a Bible study. In a completed portfolio, a student will have chosen between 4 and 6 of these methods. So a completed portfolio would look like this, with different numbers of items for local preachers and worship leaders. As we noted just now, the assessment process has a number of stages, which begin with the tutor offering suggestions. When the student has assembled his or her choice of content for the submitted portfolio, as we've already seen, the process moves first to the local tutor, then to a regional check, and it ends with a final check of some completed and assessed portfolios at connectional level. To sum up then, the important changes include the fact that local preachers and worship leaders are trained together, and the local preachers meeting appoints a mentor for worship leaders as well as for local preachers. Portfolios are not routinely sent to London, the connection, but are moderated by regional staff of the Discipleship and Ministries Learning Network. The other significant change is that those trained as worship leaders can later, if their calling develops in this particular direction, resume the course from Module 5 to become local preachers. Equally important are the things which don't change. The local preachers meeting remains the focus for the discerning of people's call to preach. That role is shared with the relevant church council in discerning a call to become a worship leader. The local preachers meeting agrees who will be the tutor for training and who will mentor a student who is on note or entering worship leader training. As now, the first assessment of students' work is at local level by the tutor. Finally, 1 or 2 quick answers to some obvious questions. Faith and worship, with its familiar blue folders, will be phased out, and not available to new students after September 2016. Anyone continuing to use Faith and Worship will have to complete their studies by 2021. If a student has already completed Section A of Faith and Worship, he or she will not take Modules 1 and 2, although a complete first portfolio, as we've described it, will have to be submitted. Those who've done Sections A and B of the existing course will not need to take Modules 1 to 4, and will not need to submit the first new portfolio. However, students will need to be aware that there may be gaps in their learning, as the courses don't directly match. Any student can start the new course from September 2015. You may think of other questions which your local meeting can't answer. If so, please look first at the appropriate question and answer section of the Methodist website. That's methodistchurch.org.uk/LP. It will be updated regularly. You've seen this slide before, but it's worth reminding ourselves of the vision which has guided those working on the new course. We'll leave it on the screen for a few moments. And once again, thank you for listening.